The Republic of Turkey lies at an end of the Mediterranean Sea. Historically, as well as in a real sense, it lies at the crossroads of the world and is, in our modern day, one of the most strategically located of countries. Ankara, in the interior, is the nation's present capital. Formerly, it was Istanbul. Centuries ago, it was Bursa. These three cities are covered at length in our film, Introducing Turkey. Turkey's panorama is concerned primarily with rural and provincial life in the areas bordered by the Aegean, the Black, and the Mediterranean Seas. It takes you along the coast and through the interior, through the heartland of Turkey. We will travel clockwise in a wide circle from busy modern Izmir on the Aegean Sea to industrial Zonguldak on the Black Sea, then through the vast wheat-producing Anatolian plains and interior villages, on to ancient Tarsus and Antakya on the Mediterranean, through Kuz Kulisi, Side, and Aspendos, to the rug center Isparta. Kütahya, the ceramic city, is next. Antalya is where we end our Turkish panorama. Our opening glimpse of Turkey is in the city of Izmir. It has one of the nation's busiest and most important seaports. In former times, it was known as Smyrna. From Izmir are exported world-famous dried fruits, including famed Smyrna figs and sultana raisins. This might well be rated the dried fruit capital of the world. A great variety of goods move through Izmir on their way to world markets, but imports are heavy here too. Agricultural equipment in large volume is being imported for the nation's expanding farms. Smyrna was nearly totally destroyed in Turkey's War of Liberation in 1923. In the rebuilding, parks have been developed, and here bougainvillea grace the scene. Modern apartment houses on tree-lined boulevards have taken the place of former structures. In a city so completely rebuilt, there is decided newness, yet there are many interesting links with the past. But for a modern facet, we have this international industrial fairgrounds. When no fair is in progress, it doubles as a park the year round. Izmir is an active international trading center with its annual fair being its most important international event. Exhibitors from 25 countries have attractive displays in their national pavilions. The fair lasts several weeks. All this is in sharp contrast to the ancient Roman Greek city that occupied this site. Two Roman aqueducts, still in a good state of preservation, stand nearby. They were built to carry water to the ancient city. Throughout recorded history, this has been the site of an important community. Here you may encounter old Greek gods and personalities of antiquity. There is Neptune, minus his trident, and somewhat the worse for wear. As for Aphrodite, we find she has more successfully withstood the passage of time. The centuries have hardly ruffled her dress. The buttons on it are still in place. This entire area has had an uninterrupted identity from the dawn of human history. Ephesus, famous in biblical times, is nearby. Down this marble street, St. Paul and St. John are known to have walked. Ephesus was the site of the Temple of Diana, said to be the largest Greek temple ever designed. It occupied an area 4 times that of the Parthenon in Athens and is counted one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Earthquakes have left few ancient structures standing in Turkey. This decorative bit from beneath the cornice of the temple and the cornice stones themselves give some indication of the once massive size. The stone carvings, sometimes lace-like in character, suggest ancient skill and craftsmanship. In the hills above Ephesus stands the shrine of Mary, Mother of Jesus, today a site of Christian pilgrimage as acknowledged by His Holiness the Pope. It is believed Mary spent many years of her life on this very spot. With Izmir, formerly known as Smyrna, we can expect to find Smyrna fig orchards nearby. The ancients called this area the Garden of the Gods, in part because of such fruit. We are passing through fig orchards somewhat ahead of the season when commercial harvesting takes place. At present, you find only an occasional picker gathering figs purely for home consumption. When commercial picking starts, portions of the crop will be dried in modern factories in Izmir. But I wonder if you know a solitary Smyrna fig can banish the blues and induce an instantaneous change in one's outlook on life. Sultana grapes are another well-known Turkish fruit. Women working here wear a shawl, as many farmers' wives do, for protection against the sun. The word sultana originally applied to a woman member of a sultan's family, a wife or mother or sister. Turkey's past dependence on agriculture for her national welfare is rapidly being better balanced by industrialization on a nationwide scale. If we now go from the west to the north coast of Turkey, we move from the Aegean to the Black Sea. One of Turkey's most important cities on this coast is Zonguldak. This area has the only major coal deposits of the entire Mediterranean basin. Buildings of this city are scattered over surrounding hills. The coast is mountainous, providing no good natural harbors. In winter, the sea can be in an angry frame of mind, and generally is. To develop the port so it can handle an increased volume of coal shipments, a great breakwater was constructed with enormous cement blocks. Highly specialized equipment is needed for work like this. Turkey has spared no expense on this project, which serves the economy of free Europe. It brought in special vessels for the mass movement of rubble from shoreside rock quarries. A mountain was dumped into the sea, a steel boxful at a time. Vast beds of coal are located along Turkey's Black Sea coast. Happily, the nation has extensive deposits of many minerals. Chrome ore, an important element in the production of steel, is abundant. But coal has been mined here for many years. Turkey has had reasonable supplies for her ships, railroads, and industrial plants. But in the past, old-style operating methods have prevented maximum operating efficiency and limited the supplies that could be exported. Under the stimulus of today's national vitality, the coal industry is being modernized. Up-to-date elevators are replacing older equipment. Similar efficiency has been applied to operations below ground. A simple device for emptying cars from the mine is to revolve them in the dumping shed. From this point, conveyor belts move the coal to sorting and washing bins and then to storage or shipment. Empty cars roll back toward the pit head, where a chain takes over and moves them the rest of the way. An important steel industry serves Turkey with mills in the interior capable of meeting the nation's normal domestic requirements. Large quantities of coal mined in the Zonguldak area are converted into coke for these mills. Coking plants are also producers of many important byproducts. Valuable chemical derivatives come from coal. So, by rail and water, the coal of Turkey is distributed throughout the nation. Industrial plants in the interior are necessarily served by rail. Large quantities of coal are transferred to bunker stations on the Bosphorus, where ships of all friendly nations calling at Istanbul can refuel. On the Asiatic side of the Bosphorus lies the great heartland of Turkey, the plains of Anatolia. We are going first to a small community called Urgup. It is a typical market town serving the surrounding countryside. Many of the purchasers of pots and pans and bolts of cloth come from nearby villages in Goreme Valley, one of the most unusual settings imaginable. Ages ago, the area was buried beneath a mass of volcanic ash, and above this was deposited a thick layer of lava. In time, the ash turned to stone. For ages now, erosion has eaten away at the accumulated mass. In the process, a valley has formed. Nature has given it thousands of oddly shaped cones. Yet here in this fantastic setting are farming communities. As long ago as the 5th century, Christian hermits built monasteries and dwellings in these pinnacles, carving rooms out of the soft volcanic stone. This is ancient Cappadocia of biblical times. Hard capstones were formed by the eroding overburden of lava, and these served to protect the softer volcanic rock directly beneath. Gradually, the elements wore away at unprotected portions. A doorway was carved, sometimes high up on the side, and then chambers were worked into the heart of the cone. Many rooms still lie deep within the body of the larger cones. In the absence of staircases, getting in or out of such dwellings offered some hazards and still does. Probably the old hermits intentionally discouraged visitors. Yet a visit to these ancient living quarters and monasteries is rewarding. Of the rooms carved from solid stone, many remain very much as they were centuries ago. Ancient murals are still clear on walls and ceilings. This one carries out a motif of the Holy Family. Vandals at some time have defaced it. The surprising thing, however, is that any trace of it is left. Though the men who carved these rooms could not have executed their work scientifically, they had a fine sense of just how much rock must be left for suitable support of floors and ceilings. Today, villages frequently build their houses adjacent to an ancient cone to take advantage of it for a storeroom. Frequently, the back room dwarfs the rest of the house and offers some hazard in the form of an occasional falling capstone. Because the soil is poor, the villagers encourage large numbers of pigeons to roost in unoccupied cones. They have thus established valuable rookeries that yield guano. With it, they enrich the soil sufficiently for farming. The area is one in which you would not expect much farm activity, yet these people cultivate fruit trees as well as all the leafy and root vegetables they need. Wheat is the great crop of the plains, a whole sea of it. The change that modernization is bringing to Turkey is apparent in agriculture. Once the hand scythe was their major farm tool. With it, the cutting of grain is a long, slow process. It is laborious to cut and move every stalk of grain by hand. When a farmer's productive capacity is restricted by such meager tools, he can produce at little more than a mere subsistence level. If one has draft animals and this Rube Goldberg mowing machine, the cutting of grain can be speeded up. Helpful though this is, it does not carry the harvesting process very far. It has only cut the wheat, but the grain must still be separated from the straw. Wheat cut this way is generally loaded onto farm wagons and hauled off to the villages. The threshing that follows is an even slower, time-consuming process. Since time immemorial, a threshing floor has been an indispensable link in the production of grain. Here will follow long weeks of threshing by a combination of draft animals and a threshing sled, a wooden device with stones embedded in the bottom of it. The stones create a grinding effect, and the grain is eventually dislodged from its stalk. These threshing boards are simple affairs. Turn one over and you observe the nature of it. Stones embedded in the bottom do the work. As rapidly as national and private budgets have permitted, tractor-drawn small combines have been imported. Ones like this cut, thresh, and sack the grain in a continuous operation. Their use has enabled Turkish farmers to greatly increase their yield for the same amount of man-hours of labor. Funds advanced by the United States government have made many of these purchases possible. Such equipment carries American insignia, and appreciative people may know of its source. Nowhere has this mechanization been more productive than in areas like that comprising the enormous Malya farm. This state-operated seed wheat farm was but an idle prairie 10 years ago. You may wonder if this is a very large agricultural enterprise. Let me answer that question pictorially. Later in the day, these combines seem to have turned into dinosaurs from prehistoric times. Scientific production of seed wheat on large state-operated farms has made it possible to completely revitalize grain production throughout the country. With resulting increased production, Turkey has changed from an importer of grain to an exporter of it. Today, the nation is the fourth largest exporter of wheat in the Western world, an important basis for trade between various countries and Turkey. Attractive and relatively modern houses serve the workers on such farms as Malya. This young woman, whose husband is employed here, is out of doors in the early morning, dressed in trousers that many farm women wear as a convenience for working on the land. While her clothing is somewhat traditional, the dress of the children in no way sets them apart from American youngsters around the house. American-style clothing is general throughout Turkey. Soon there may be a small group of neighbors assembled, for about this time the bread man will be along. The farm, far from the nearest community, has its own bakery. Housewives may have as much bread as they wish. One of these women must have substantial bread eaters in her family. At the office, men talk with the farm's director. It is interesting to recall that Turkey Red, a hardy winter wheat, was introduced into the U.S. in 1870. Let's swing now through central Anatolia along its constantly expanding network of highways. In the western part of the U.S., one occasionally encounters cattle or sheep being moved along country or mountain roads. You are now in the Turkish equivalent of the U.S. western states, and groups of herders and animals are moving from one grazing area to another. It is entirely possible your journey will take you through the countryside when a holiday is at hand. In that event, you might encounter a group of villagers holding an impromptu dance in the middle of the road. This new highway has recently been completed at the edge of their village. Its hard surface is a fine, dust-free area for such an out-of-doors get-together. You'll be encouraged to stop and lend your talents to the gathering. It might be best to be dressed in your holiday finery for the occasion. Or you might meet a solitary traveler, a tortoise, taking his time in the middle of the road. You repeatedly encounter these fellows. In the absence of ability to move fast, he resorts to ancient armor plate for protection. But observe the modern retractable landing gear. There may be times when you will encounter a substantially larger traveler than the tortoise, a trained bear, being taken by his keeper to some nearby village. If you have a spare watermelon in your car and care to share it, you will have made an appreciative friend. The rebuilding of Turkey's highways is in itself a dramatic story. Military necessity is being served, as is the nation's entire economy. Large quantities of modern highway building equipment have been imported, primarily from the USA. The problem is not alone the initial building of new roads, but the all-important aspect of maintenance. No network of superhighways is contemplated, but one consistent with the nation's economy. Hard-surfaced roads already connect a number of Turkey's major cities, but there are vast distances involved in the Anatolian plains, and hard-surfacing all roads is prohibitively expensive. The goal is a network of 125,000 miles of all-weather roads, and the majority of them must be gravel. Improved roads have meant tremendous savings in travel time. Former 8-hour drives are now 2-hour ones. Buses travel all of Turkey's major roads. One can very effectively get about in this manner. This bus promises a safe journey. Mashallah on the hood means with God's protection. Red roses are offered as an appropriate touch for the traveler. A colorful waterfall graces one of the doors and promises scenic charm. For one traveling in the direction of Tarsus, this is no idle promise. On the outskirts of the city is fulfillment of the scene. Historians tell us that here, near this waterfall, Antony and Cleopatra held repeated rendezvous long ago. The city of Tarsus was St. Paul's birthplace. Could he return to it today, he would find it changed beyond recognition. Tarsus is experiencing a rebirth as old gives way to new. New buildings, new roads, new parks. Change has been the order of the day in Turkey ever since the establishment of the Turkish Republic in 1923 under Ataturk's leadership. We have traveled clockwise from the Aegean to the Black Sea and then through the Central Plains. At Iskenderiye on the Mediterranean, we come to one of Turkey's largest harbors, slated for development into an important seaport. Beyond Iskenderiye in eastern Turkey lie extensive mineral deposits and vast grazing lands. Nearby is good cotton country. The coastal belt is much like Southern California. It needs only irrigation to make it highly productive. Here, substantial quantities of Turkey's huge cotton crop are grown. People of this region frequently take a holiday at nearby Antalya, which is ancient Antioch of biblical times. Though no ruins remain of the former city, visitors frequently unearth bits of broken pottery or an occasional old coin. The beauty of the Antakya Falls is responsible for most contemporary visitors. A subterranean river bursts from hiding at this point, pouring out from beneath nearby hills and providing the area with dense vegetation. The Mediterranean coastal belt of Turkey is hot in the summertime, and shade trees are much sought after. The abundance of them nearby combine with the falls to make this a popular picnic spot. Watermelons enliven American picnic tables, and so it is in Turkey. Taking a picnic lunch and heading for the hills with family or friends is as ageless as the falls themselves. During the summer season, you'll find melons widely distributed. This young man from Istanbul can buy them in a city market, but it has just been suggested to him there is no matching the flavor of a melon as it comes fresh from the vine. A little scientific research soon has him convinced. This coastal area is the site of several civilizations: the Hittites, the Greeks, the Romans. Republican Turks have now replaced Ottoman Turks. While there is plenty of activity today along the Mediterranean shore, the present population is small compared to ancient times. Take Kulisi, for example, some miles west of Tarsus. Here, a crumbling seaside castle appears to have been the largest structure of a community extending far back into the coastal hills. This may have served for a time as a fortress in the days when Eastern and Western Christians were in violent opposition. There seems to have been a large church within the main enclosure. Occasionally, camels are placed here by some farmer to graze amid the ruins. It could be argued that camels have very little regard for man, though since time immemorial they have served him. The area gets its name Kulisi, meaning Girl Island, from the presence of this island ruin offshore. Legend has it there was a daughter of an ancient ruler who was fearful of snakes. So her father built this island castle for her where she dwelt in splendid isolation. Some miles to the west was Side, a Greek-Roman city of antiquity. Here, too, nature conspired to leave few traces of a once flourishing community. The violent earthquake that destroyed everything here appears to have left the horror of it written in this stone face. At least this facilitates the teaching of ancient history in a nearby school. The past is everywhere in evidence. It is not confined to a classroom. At recess time, a boy may find ancient history comes to life beneath him. In a nearby unused field, a farmer recently observed that soil erosion had uncovered a portion of an ancient mosaic. He scraped more of the soil away. Here, in an almost perfect state of preservation, is a floor of beautiful proportions. Water poured on the mosaic brings out its color and design. A motto in the center of it reads in Greek, Ephi Phiri Kinon Ikon Mu, translating into "My wish is you would come to my house." Here's an expression of hospitality that has outlived both author and artisan who preserved it. A mosaic stork also appears in the floor. This is a direct link with today. Traditionally, storks have always been welcome. Like people, they occasionally make a housing problem for themselves, but they are particularly welcome to the farmers. They consume large quantities of insects. Returning to the antiquities of the area, one of the most striking of them is the great amphitheater of Aspendos. It was built to accommodate 13,000 people. There are not that many within a radius of many miles today. Here's a memento of man's short pilgrimage on Earth and another reminder of Turkey's rich cultural heritage. This structure survived the ravages of time and earthquakes as it was built snugly into the side of a hill. Perhaps the most interestingly located ancient ruins in Turkey are those of Hierapolis. Originally a Hellenistic city, later a Roman one, it was destroyed by earthquake about 1200 A.D. The city stood upon a high white cliff. This expanse of white cliff has been formed, down through the ages, by a small stream coming from a nearby warm spring and carrying calcium in suspension. Flowing steadily for centuries, this small stream has built up an impressive deposit of calcium terraces and columns. In Turkish, this cliff is called Pamukkale, translating into Cotton Castle. An equally appropriate name would be Icicle Castle, for in many respects this looks like falling water caught by the cold hand of winter. The formations also assume the shape of large lily pads. The warm spring, which is the source of this stream, is a favorite swimming hole for nearby residents. The earthquake that destroyed Hierapolis dropped temple columns and cornices into the pool. Here they still lie, and in a better state of preservation than those exposed to atmosphere. No calcium deposits here where the water is still warm. While some sections of the country have an abundance of water, others are semi-arid. In areas that enjoy sufficient rainfall, fields are lush and green. Then the scene becomes a pastoral one. Animal husbandry in particular engages the attention of thousands of interior residents. American technicians have worked with Turkey in the blueprinting and construction of modern packing plants. Occasionally, an animal has the responsibility of baskets full of children, and there is always the responsibility of their own young. From all appearances, here is one individual who hasn't been around very long. Speaking of animals, here are a few glimpses of some good horse sense. If flies are bothering you, it is using your head to borrow someone else's tail and loan your own. Wool from the Anatolian plains finds its way to Isparta, the center of Turkish rug manufacture. As the morning shadow of a solitary minaret falls across the marketplace, trading is already underway. There is the usual collection of pottery and other household goods, but the presence of Turkish rugs marks this as a rug center. They may be very casually displayed, but so many people in this community make rugs, they may be justifiably casual about them. What may appear to be a bed of flowers in the yard of this factory is freshly dyed wool put out to dry. For this is one of the large factories producing wool yarn primarily for rug making. Indoors, a modern carding machine is fed with freshly washed wool. Nearly everyone is familiar with scenes of laborious hand carding, where raw wool is worked between hand paddles, lining up the fibers prior to actual weaving into yarn. In the case of this carding machine, revolving rollers do the work. In time, treads take over and put down a long lap that presently will be spun into crude yarn. Turkish carpets and rugs are carefully made. The spinning jennies then take over, and the crude yarn is twisted into strong, finished strands. After yarn is dyed and dried in the sun, it is sent to the homes of rug makers. The actual rug making is strictly a home industry. It is this age-old skill that is primarily responsible for Turkish rugs being world famous. In many surrounding villages, hundreds of women work at this craft. Rug making is frequently an enterprise of the women of a given family. There is no time clock to punch. The loom can be turned to whenever there is spare time. The actual mechanics of the operation involve tying of thousands upon thousands of knots. The yarn is knotted and cut at such a speed it is not easily observed. A sectional pattern hangs overhead. The weaver selects the correctly colored yarn and locates the cord about which to knot it. This girl's hands move so fast it is hard to follow them. With work finished, a completed rug is transported to a washing plant for a thorough cleaning. It is not generally known that at this stage of a Turkish rug's life, it gets the equivalent of a haircut and a very vigorous shampoo. The rug weaver, in cutting yarn after each knot, has necessarily left an uneven fiber length over the surface. Shearing these uneven ends accentuates the pattern and adds the traditional smoothness. Then comes a vigorous shampooing in which the rug gets a very rugged workout. You might think he was scrubbing a basement floor rather than a valuable rug. There is even one point at which he uses a hoe. While this may have looked like drastic treatment, you can judge the results for yourself as these rugs hang in the sun to dry. If we now transfer our attentions from Isparta to Kütahya, we will move from a rug to a ceramic center. This represents another interesting handicraft. There are many ceramic factories located throughout this area, and you can pleasantly spend a little time in any one of them. The kick wheel operator is a man of steady hand and sure eye. It is fascinating to watch a sure-handed potter start with a shapeless mass of moist clay and fashion it into a vessel of his own choosing. To his steady hands, making a hollow, long-stem vase like this is no trick at all, and never a false move. After molding, it is set aside to dry before being fired. With the finished piece set aside, he turns to another cylinder of clay. He drops it heavily to the wheel to make it stick and turn with it. After firing, the vessels are passed along to girls who paint them. Designs are largely floral or geometric. In former times, in conformity with ancient Islamic law, human or animal forms were never used. There is no longer any such restriction. But traditional designs remain popular. This young woman is working on a plate combining Arabic writing with a floral pattern. It uses the opening line of a prayer, "I begin with the name of God." This plate has a geometric design taken from an ancient Seljuk pattern. We have traveled a great circle through central Turkey, touching the coast from time to time. Back on the coast, we come to Antalya, where a small stream cascades to the sea. Antalya's busy harbor is crowded with small vessels that ply between coastal villages of the area. Cotton, one of Turkey's rapidly expanding exports, is grown all along the Mediterranean coast. Chrome ore is also mined nearby. A large portion of Turkey's chrome is shipped to the United States. It is an essential alloy in the manufacture of high-carbon steel. While Antalya is a busy community, it is not without its quiet retreats. Out of the past, reaching back through Roman, Greek, Seljuk, and Ottoman civilizations, Turkey has emerged as a new nation. Our craftsman at his potter's wheel symbolizes the rapid change that has come to Turkey as she molds a new future with sure and steady hands. After her experience through 10 long centuries at the crossroads of the world, she is shaping a modern state. The once common camel caravans are rapidly becoming a thing of the past. They carry too little and take too long. A single modern diesel train today provides more transportation than 1,000 camels. Comfort and dispatch are beyond comparison. All the major population centers of the nation are linked together by rail. With today's magic carpet, the camel's trip of 100 days is now but a few hours. Radio blankets the nation. Even a remote village has its news of the world as fast as it is made. Here, Miss Gonzale Bashar, holder of a Miss Universe award from a European-wide beauty contest, is being interviewed over the air. As in other progressive countries of the world, a predominantly agrarian economy is giving way to a better balanced industrial one. The application of modern mechanical devices is lightening man's burden while he adjusts himself to their added complexities. All the camels of Anatolia would accomplish little in comparison with work done by the equipment used on such projects as the modernization of the harbor at Zonguldak. Thousands of miles of new roads receive up-to-date maintenance. The new network of highways serves both military and economic ends. Modernization is paced by an expanding domestic economy and by trade with the democratic nations of the West. Into the country come seemingly endless streams of farm machinery. The whole complexion of Turkish agriculture changed as tractors and combines were put to work. All this has made it possible to greatly expand food production. From a nation that as recently as 1951 imported 120,000 tons of grain to supplement its domestic production, Turkey has become one of the 4 major exporters of wheat among Western nations. Much of the progress in recent years was visualized and implemented by the great leader Ataturk. Not only did he hold his country together at the end of World War I, but headed his countrymen in the direction you find them traveling today. Turkey's determination to defend this new way of life is symbolized by its democratic army. Working with the world community of nations, Turkey has demonstrated its willingness to assume its full share in the maintenance of international law and order. American military equipment, acquired through the cooperation of our respective governments, has enabled Turkey to greatly increase its military effectiveness. A competent navy watches over Turkey's coastline along the Mediterranean, the Bosphorus, the Black Sea. The smiles of these people speak for 22 million Turks, and in them you read appreciation for a way of life that is readily understood in the United States. The peoples of both nations share much in common. In a world of conflicting ideologies, Turkey has done no fence-sitting. She has come out clear and unequivocally for the democratic way of life. One's rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness stand out sharp and clear in Turkey. No nation has made more progress in so short a time, and none looks to the future with more confidence.